Hey guys, how y'all doing? Luna here with a new video. I'm sorry I haven't been able to upload as recently as I would like to. I know that no one watches my videos yet, but I still feel some sort of responsibility to upload frequently, and I haven't been able to. It's been a few rough weeks, and the album that I'm going to talk about today, it's quite the album, so it took me a lot of time to prepare to talk about it. I'm pretty sure you've seen the title already. Today's video is about one of the most depressing albums in the history of music. We're talking about the Caretakers' Everywhere at the End of Time. If you haven't heard about this album, which would be quite weird because everyone has turned this album into such a meme, it's one of the most depressing albums I've ever heard, and still people manage to make a meme out of it, and they're really funny too. Basically, this is a 6-hour plus album that tries to paint a picture of a person with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. If you know nothing about this disease, then go look it up on YouTube, because I'm not a doctor nor a psychologist, so I don't feel like I have the knowledge to explain it to you. But I'm pretty sure I can explain you the basics. This is a progressive disease that slowly but surely messes up the user's memory to the point where basically you forget who you are, who the people around you are, all the memories you had from your childhood or even memories from yesterday completely vanish, and you even forget things like breathing. Only the thought of forgetting about everyone you've ever loved and everything you've ever been through, it's fucking horrible in itself. And this album does a really good job at describing this feeling. So basically what I'm going to do in this video is analyzing the album itself and how good does this album actually portrays the image of a person suffering this disease. And of course, at the end of the video, I'm going to give my own opinion on this album. Do I think it's overrated? Do I think it's the masterpiece everyone says it is? But of course, this is only my personal opinion. So if you have your own, please leave it down below in the comments, and I'll make sure to check it out and reply to your comment. This album goes through 6 different stages, so without further ado, let's go on with the video. The first stage on this album represents the part where the patient doesn't know anything's wrong. He still has all his memories. Something seems to be a little bit off, but he still doesn't know why. Basically, most of the songs on this album are covers. The first song on the album, for example, the most recognizable one because of the memes behind it, is a cover from a rather happy song called Heartaches, a song that I really recommend if you like, old style music. So how does the Caretaker grabs a song like this, a song that it's happy, and makes it so depressing? Well, basically he makes it a bit slower, and also with a lower pitch, and adds reverb to the song. It adds echo to it. And even though these changes are subtle, it makes the whole difference. And the track goes from a happy track with beautiful lyrics, with this daydream vibe to it, to a darker and nostalgic feeling. And the reason why this song is so popular is because it does a really good job making you feel like making you feel nostalgic about your time when you were a kid and you had those glory days, when you didn't have to worry about anything and everything was better. And the description of this stage paints it perfectly. This stage basically is you remembering the old times. Everything seems to be okay, but there is something that you can't get your hands on that is not right. Something is going wrong, but you still don't know what it is, so you ignore it. It has a few cuts here and there, something sounds a bit off in the music. It has a lot of static noises, which is the reason why it feels like it's a little bit off. But it's still beautiful. This whole stage, it's really beautiful, but the problem is that it's an hour plus long. You can graph all the beautiful music in the world and put it in a 5-hour montage. It doesn't matter how beautiful the songs are. You need a bit of you need something to make it entertaining. Because even if it's the most beautiful thing you've ever heard, if you've been listening to it for 1 hour and it seems so unchanging, it's going to get boring. Now, I know what many people say about this album. The reasons why this album is so long is basically because the disease itself is really progressive and slow. And obviously the Caretaker just wanted to make an album that was progressive as well. The changes are so subtle from track to track that do a really good job representing how slow the whole process is, the whole process of forgetting things. But from a critical point of view, it's impossible not to focus on the fact that it's incredibly boring. If you want to make a proper review of an album, you have to listen to the album at least a few times. So for the last 3 days, I've heard this album 3 times. That means that the last 18 hours plus of my life was spent listening to this album. And even on the first listen, it was boring as fuck. Even this first stage alone makes you feel bored. As a concept, it's marvelous, it's wonderful. But the whole thing as an album, as a product, is just, it's not good. And I know that the Caretaker knew this, I'm pretty sure the guy didn't think that people would listen to this album frequently. I'm probably the only one that has heard this album so many times, and the main reason for that is because I'm depressed. You can go to the comments on that video and see all the people commenting on their experiences with this disease. Most of the people that wrote those comments wrote it while they were listening to the very first track on the album. It's not me who says it, it's YouTube analytics. With this, I'm not trying to say that the comments were fake or anything like that, of course not. I'm just trying to say that as a product, as something that you listen to, the album is not nice because of how long and progressive and boring it is. I do not have a single problem with long albums. Actually, Lift Your Skin It Fits Like Antennas to Heaven from Godspeed is an amazing album, and it's a 2-hour long album with only instrumentals, with no lyrics. But it's still entertaining because the music is exciting. Sometimes it has moments where everything seems to be quiet, but then it goes wild, and then it goes quiet again. I mean, the album is entertaining, and Godspeed does a really good job at keeping you into the album. Instead, this album doesn't really try it in stage 1, and it's even more apparent in stage 2. This stage is basically you acknowledging that something is wrong. You still have the beautiful moments that we saw in stage 1, but now they're more convoluted, they feel weirder, and the music is unorganized and all over the place. This part of the album is a bit more interesting because the shifts in music, tempo, and the overall cuts in the album are more precise and do a really good job at, you're really into it in the way that you want to know what's next. You want to know how the next song is going to sound like. You want to know how the disease is going to make their way through your mind. And the most amazing thing is that you don't notice when you get to this point. Remember, this is a progressive album, and if you're not paying attention to what you're listening to, you're going to find yourself in stage 2 and not even noticing it. This is the reason why this album is so scary, because these changes are so obvious, but because of how much time it takes for these changes to appear and to manifest, you don't see them coming. You just find yourself in the new place, just like the actual mental disorder. It's scary for them because they remember a few things crystal clear, so it appears that nothing is wrong. But in the back of their mind, they know that they're forgetting stuff. And sometimes those stuff come back all of a sudden and make them feel even more scared because they acknowledge that they forgot them. This is one of the best parts of the album. The problem is that, again, it's way too long. After 15 minutes or so of this weird compositions, everything turns into a big blur, and once again you find yourself distracted. You don't see the changes coming, and even though it's amazing, it's almost hypnotizing when you notice the changes all of a sudden, it only shows how uninteresting the music is. With this, I'm not trying to say that the Caretaker isn't a talented person. Of course, in order to put together an album like this, you need to be a really talented human being. But as a product, it's not really what you would like in an album, at least for me. I love these weird kind of compositions. I love long albums. I don't really have a problem with them as long as it is entertaining. If stage 2 is good at something, it's keeping you hooked for a bit longer than stage 1. But again, after 15 minutes or 20 minutes, it all becomes a big blur and you're just waiting for this stage to end, really. I find myself doing something that I don't usually do. With an album like this Wants to Be Kind, 2 hours and a half, but I only stood there listening to the music without doing anything else. Instead, with this album, that was fucking impossible. I was going to fall asleep. Probably have a really ugly nightmare, but still, I would fall asleep if I had to listen to this album without doing anything else. I cooked in the meantime, I played video games, I was doing multiple things while listening to this album because it wasn't that interesting for me to be just paying attention to the music. But again, the album surprises you with stage 3. Now in this part of the album, you'll find a lot of resemblance to part 1 rather than part 2. Unlike part 2, you clearly know when you're jumping into stage 3 because the first song on stage 3 is basically the same as stage 1. It's just a burning memory, it's just that this sounds a bit more distorted and, more creepy. It's a different cover from the same song, but it's really amazing the feeling that you get because remember, it's only stage 3. You're only halfway across the album, and actually less than halfway across the album, but you've been listening to this album for 2 hours something. This is the moment where you realize how much the music has changed. And it's incredible to think that people, that actually suffer from this disorder go through this same realization, but instead of the music, they go through it with their memories. They realize that their memories are more distorted, they're not the same as they used to be. They don't remember many of the things that they used to remember, and the things they do don't feel right, they feel incomplete. So yes, this album has amazing moments of awareness. And even on the third time I heard this album, it was incredible because I heard this song and I'm like, well, I have heard this before. And you realize it's the same song that you started with, but so different and so much more creepy. It's amazing, honestly. It's quite an experience. I definitely recommend you to listen to this album because of that, but only once. Don't do 3 as me. So yes, this album does this kind of things and it's really good at it. But again, even though stage 3 is really good, it's really good going in, going out, it's basically the same thing. Boring as hell. This stage is basically you in the last moments of awareness. You forget about everything, you forget about everyone past this point. It's really depressing because you can tell how the music dies down by the end of this. So maybe this is my favorite stage because of how, even though it's really boring still, it's the one that changes the most throughout the end into a really just abstract and distorted type of music that goes on in stage 4. This is where the album doesn't have a single redeeming factor in terms of a product, as a music album, as something that you listen to because you like music. This is the part where everything starts to be more terrifying because those old memories that used to comfort you and tell you that you still remember them, and made you feel human, like you were someone in the world, now represent terror because they come in and out only to remind you that you forgot these memories. The music in this is horrible. It's just all over the place. It's a bunch of sounds that don't even make sense. And it was really hard for me to not skip this part completely because it's also one of the longest ones. It's so unchanging and it's so dark to the point where it's not even interesting anymore. And listen, I like this type of music. As I said before on this channel, Joy Division is one of my favorite bands and they have similar music in terms of how distorted the sound sounds. I understand that I understand that this tries to represent how horrible it is to go through this situation, but still, you can do this without making it so chaotic. Other reason why I don't really like this stage is because it ruins the progressiveness of the whole thing. It doesn't feel good, it doesn't sound correct. It's like all of a sudden you change to a different album that you don't want to listen to. It's too much of a mess for me to enjoy something like this. And the fact that it's the longest running thing is even more annoying. So this was really hard for me to go through. Let's go on with stage 5, which is, well, you'll see. Stage 5 is even more distorted, but a bit quieter, and just shows that he's starting to forget everything to the point where even this flashes of memories that go by, he starts to forget them as well. He doesn't get them as often. It's still horrible and it's still terrifying for the person who's going through it, but it's a bit more peaceful because he doesn't get all of these flashes as often as he did in stage 4. But does it mean that stage 5 is better than stage 4? Not really, because it's still so all over the place. And it's almost like watching a shitty horror movie where they don't really try to build up the tension. They just go into a really dark room and they put an ugly face with a loud sound on it. It feels like they are not really trying anymore. They're just pressing a lot of keys on a keyboard to try and make it sound as distorted as possible, and that's it. And again, yes, it's depressing and it's horrible, and it does a really good job at describing how the disease actually is, but from a product as a musical piece, it's bullshit. Of course, I know that this was the whole point. Remember, I know that this album is not supposed to be, enjoyable. I know that this album is supposed to show you something, paint a picture, but that does not mean that you have to put a lot of just distorted sounds all over the place to try and paint a bit. I get it. 20 minutes of this and I would have gotten the picture perfectly. And in this part of the album, they didn't really give a fuck about progression, by the way. I used to forgive the fact that the stages were so long because they made the changes so subtle, and it made you feel like you didn't know in what stage you were. And that is terrifying, not knowing, oh, did I forgot about this? Do I still have all my memories, or have I forgotten them? And because I forgot about them, I don't know I forgot. That felt amazing, and that was honestly breathtaking that someone could do that with only sounds. But in this stage, you can tell where you are because the changes are so drastic and so ugly and so loud that you basically say, okay, I'm here now. The concept and the theme behind it, the lore of an album, it's supposed to make a good album better, not a bad album good. This stage of the album is just not it, and it really brings down many of the things that you felt during stage 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed some other parts of this album. Now this part of the album is the most depressing one by far. Most of this stage is basically just silence. This is the part where you forget about everything. You still have a few, really few moments of, getting back some old memories, especially music. Most of the people that get to this point of the disease are basically just acting out of instinct. They forget how to chew, they forget how to drink, they forget many things, and especially they forget about their loved ones. They don't know who you are, they don't know who they are, and they don't know where they at, they don't know their names. They forget about everything until the point where many people come to the theory that they are no longer the person you knew. So yeah, I don't want to get too deep into this stage because there's nothing really to it. It's just silence constantly with a few distortions here and there, but nothing too representative. It basically is just you forgetting who you are and losing your consciousness in a way. As a whole, I believe that this album is quite an amazing experience. The first time you listen to it, it can be really boring, and as an album, as a product, as a music album, it's not that good. I have to be honest. It's not as good as many people think it is. I believe that the people who say that it's one of the best albums ever haven't really heard the album, but I believe they just see the concept and say, wow, this is genius. And indeed, it is. It is an amazing concept, and it takes a lot of talent for you to build something like this. But that does not mean that you get to grab the album and say, this is the greatest thing ever, because it isn't. I believe that the Caretaker is a genius because he took a concept that it's already really hard to explain with words and put it into the music. And I think the job is amazing. But as a product, as an actual album, I can't give this album such a high score. I would love to give this album the highest score ever because it definitely deserves it for how much talent and how much dedication was put into it, how much hours, how much research was put into this album. But from a musical point of view, and if you want to be critical, this album is not really that great. I'm giving this album a 3. That is it for today, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. Again, remember, this is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, make sure to leave it down below in the comments. I would love to listen to what you guys have to say about this album because, I feel like my opinion is a bit rough on this album because of how unorganized the music is, you know, how chaotic everything is. And also you can use the comments on this video as some sort of chat room if you're going through, you know, this disorder or have a family that's going through this, you know, this process. Feel free to leave a comment down below about it and I'll make sure to listen to you and just wish you the best. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope to see you soon with another video on the channel. Bye.
Such a sacred thing to me. I can't believe it's just a burning memory.